Hey everyone, my name is Bitupan. Welcome to the show. I want to ask you something. Have you ever wondered what is reality? Have you ever questioned reality? Is your reality real? What if your dream was real and your reality was a dream? It was always believed that science and spirituality cannot go together. But now people are starting to accept the fact that spirituality is the real science. It's going to be an interesting show today because with my guest today, I'm going to talk about some interesting topics like history, mythology, religion, connection between the Vedas and the modern science, and what in the world had Nazis to do with anything with the Indian Vedas. We will go deep into science and spirituality, and I'm sure after listening to this conversation, your mental horizon will get expanded. So let me introduce my guest today. I'm with Dr. Charit, who is an author. He has written 6 books, including his best selling book, Evolution Cradle, The Aryan Origin. The book is a science fiction novel which goes deep into mythology, religion, and questions the reality and imagination. The foreword of the book is written by Gautam Ghosh, who is a film director, actor, producer, and a music director. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Charit. How are you?
Thank you very much, Bitupan. I'm fine. Yeah, and it was a really nice, brief introduction. Very well
I have
structured.
more to talk about you.
Really
All right.
nice. Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, he is connecting to me from Germany. So, how is the situation of lockdown in Germany? I think there is not much lockdown in Germany, right? Unlike
Yeah.
India.
Surprisingly, yes. Not much compared to what all the other countries, for example, India or the US, are going. I think the reason for that is also the healthcare system and how well they're prepared. They have been prepared already for this. So they're doing a lot of proactive testing and everything. But overall, anyway, to keep the long story short, it is pretty pleasant. The
Pleasant lockdown.
Yeah, I mean the panic wise, it's pretty pleasant compared to uh, the compared to India. I mean, if I right now if I go out, I'll still see people. I don't feel completely isolated.
Okay, okay. You are at your home right now, right?
I'm at home right now. Exactly. Yeah. So I work from home 90% of the time anyway. So for me, life has not changed much. It's not like I'm missing office because I work from home anyway. Um, it's just like a couple of days in a month where I go to the office. It's not in my own country. It's Switzerland. So anyway, I have to fly and come back. So I prefer just staying home. And yeah, so for people who are working from home and have a social connection every day at work and they're used to this, for them, I think it's a bigger challenge. For us
True,
right
true.
now, for people who are used to being isolated and work from home anyway, especially writers, right? Writers are isolated all the time.
That's
So,
true.
and I think it's a writer psychology. They tend to survive in these kind of situations way better because they're mostly in an imaginative world. They're imagining characters. They're imagining life outside reality. And like you explained at the beginning, what is reality? Am I like whatever you're experiencing right now? It's not necessary that that is the only reality, right? So,
That's true.
so
Yeah.
that's actually how what inspired me to write Evolution Ready also.
Mhm. So
Uh,
I really, get excited to know about this fact that because when I learned about this fact that everything in this universe is made out of atoms, right? Everything, including us and anything in the universe. And
exactly.
when scientists wanted to find out what is atoms made out of, and it's made out of nothing.
Yeah.
That's surprising, right? It means we are made out of nothing. In Hindi, we say "sab moh maya hai." It's all illusion. Nothing exists.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are like multiple theories surrounding that. There's a universe outside a universe outside a universe, multiple planes, multiple universes, and parallel universes, and it could be that we are just able to get to the point of the atom. And like in CERN, for example, in Switzerland, they have this huge Hadron Collider, and when they expose the electrons inside the atom, um, at a high velocity towards each other, and when they collide, they create matter and antimatter. But that's how far we could go. Maybe in a couple of years we will be able to see even beyond that, and there could be others, you know, solar systems like our own system, not solar systems, but like systems, complete systems. It doesn't have to be solar systems with maybe their own kinds of planets and another universe inside a universe inside a universe. So it's like, where are we? Are we just are we actually part of the physical plane? Are we part of something which we cannot explain? Beyond even the universe that we are at. So several people, I think, try to explain that. Astrophysicists and so people tried to expand their own minds to get into the bottom of it, but it's just too much for human brains to process.
Right. True. So I have some more things to talk about, and it will be so interesting. But before that, for viewers, I want to give some more details about Dr. Charit. Okay. So as a child, he was always obsessed with history, mythology, and religion. He studied at New York University, and after that, he moved to work in Germany, where he's currently working on his doctorate. He has accomplished over four medical and two business publications and won the Miss Making a Difference award. He's a globetrotter, by the way. He constantly travels to various countries with curiosity, learning foreign traditions, cultures, religions, modern technology, or simply in pursuit of new experiences. Apart from being a full-time employee at a Fortune 500 company, he's also an entrepreneur, an artist, a drummer, and a fitness enthusiast. So, anyways, what I want to know next from you is that, see, your curiosity is one thing. I understand you were obsessed with these things, but how did this obsession come? What triggered this obsession as a child?
Yeah. So basically, in the one thing which I noticed it is at school. We are being taught things which are rediscovered. Let's take an example of our own planet, for example, because we were talking about the universe, atoms, and so at a point where scientists in the West were just trying to debate whether Earth was flat or Earth was a sphere. Indians have already, or ancient Indian civilization was already at a stage where they were talking about even more advanced astrology or astrophysics. They were talking about the rotation and the revolution of Earth and the axis of Earth. Now we have gone beyond talking about the shape and size of our own planet, but we are now talking about the axis at which it is revolving around the planet, around the sun, and also this. And 500 years, it was only 500 years after they have, debated about the dimension of Earth or the shape of Earth, was that in Europe, now they are talking about the universe revolving around the Earth, while, Aryabhatta, for example, has already 500 years before this, he has already discovered that it was Earth revolving around the sun, not the other way around. But in school, they only teach us that Aryabhatta discovered, or he was the founder of zero. But there was something even beyond that. But they don't teach us much in school about this. So these kind of things, why is the education system not teaching things that we have already discovered, but they're teaching us things that were rediscovered in the West, and then they're teaching us back. So is there like a communication or a medium of knowledge transfer, a mistake somewhere there? The knowledge transfer around the universe, around our planet, did not happen properly. Otherwise, why would another scientist discover the same thing 500 years later, which some other civilization has already discovered? So
you think that this knowledge transfer did not happen properly. Do you think it was by purpose or it was circumstances?
That is a tricky question to answer. A very good question. Well, I hope it was not on purpose because our ancient civilization was very famous for keeping things a secret. Like Vedas were only transferred by mouth, only much later they have started writing it down. Before that, it was only being passed down uh, by word of mouth from father to son and so on. So I hope that was not the reason. I just hope that they just did not have the right communication channel to the rest of the world. Of course, there was. I'm talking about just going from 4000 BC, now coming slightly closer to 1 to 2000 BC, where the Greeks started migrating to India, and they started now learning about from our mathematicians and from all the physicists that we have in India at that time, and they then took it back to Europe. And again, that just stayed within Greece. It did not go further beyond that. And beyond that was where Galileo now was trying to discover the same thing. Now, what I was always pondering about it was, is Galileo, for example, only rediscovering, or was he just taking the knowledge from Aryabhatta, for example, which somehow he was able to get his hands on, and trying to just explain the same story again? These are some of the mysteries that I would like to get into in the future. But coming back to your question, what actually triggered my obsession, or the one thing that triggered my research, let's say that, was I saw a video of a speech that Robert J. Oppenheimer, he was the father of the atomic bomb. I saw a speech of this person, and this was in 1945. 1945, just during the World War, the Second World War, towards the end of the World War. I'm talking about.
Where did you watch? Is it there in YouTube now?
Yes, so this you'll find this on YouTube now. Yeah, I think when I first saw it, it was not on YouTube yet. I don't remember where I saw it, but I remember it very vividly. It's a black and white video of Oppenheimer right after the testing. Right after he tested the first atomic bomb in America. I believe in New Mexico. I could be wrong. The first thing that came to his mind, he said on stage, live in front of media, was a phrase from Bhagavad Gita. Now we're talking about Oppenheimer in the US, who is the father of the atomic bomb. When he saw the explosion of his own creation, the first thing that came to his mind was the Brahmastra. Now I'm just quoting what he said. He says, "Now I became death, the destroyer of worlds." So that is a translation of a phrase in Bhagavad Gita about the Brahmastra itself. So the nuclear bomb explosion that he saw reminded him of a phrase from Bhagavad Gita. So these are famous scientists, some of the most brilliant minds on the planet, who know Bhagavad Gita better than you and me do. Now, and back then, 1945, it wasn't even like there was a lot of translations available in English. And he saw the similarity between atomic bomb and the Bhagavad Gita. And subconsciously, it must have been that which triggered, his inspiration towards creating a nuclear bomb in the first place. So so for those of you, watching this video, who want to see this, you just have to go onto YouTube. I'm pretty sure you'll find it there. His name is Oppenheimer, very famous. He's the father of the atomic bomb, so you'll definitely find videos about him. Highly recommend that.
I'm definitely gonna see it after this video.
Yes.
But that is one thing, and I think there are a lot of things that people usually get wrong, or people don't even know about the Indian mythology. And what are those common things? I mean, which are important that people should know, but they do not know? What are those according to you?
So according to me, the misconception, the literal sense of what our ancestors were trying to teach us, what the first people who wrote all these stories were trying to tell us, was just everything was literal. Over the years, we started exaggerating things, of course, but we started making them figurative because we were not able to understand that, okay, whatever they are trying to say could not have been true. But actually, it must have been true. There is no other way, because even if you think about human psychology, your fantasy can only go to a certain stretch. Like, for example, take a human fantasy creation, the dragon. What is a dragon? Dragon is just a mix of fire, something we know, dragon breathes fire, wings, every bird has wings, and an iguana with a tail and a head, a reptile with a tail and a head. But that's because they have seen these things and they just put them together. But to create something which you have never seen is near impossible. For example, flying aircrafts. It's not impossible. Somebody must have seen these things. That's why they call it the Vimana Gopura, the temple. The shape of it, at the temple, the Vimana Gopura. Vimana means aircraft. So that is basically something that somebody at some point must have seen. Something that looked like a rocket, something that could take off and land. And at the center of it, the Sanctum Sanctorum, is where we put the God's idol. That could have been where that particular person was controlling this aircraft. I mean, just something which I think is probably a misconception of, or a mistake in the translation or the way they came. Or we can even go, slightly beyond that and take evidences. Like, for example, it's a very well-known fact that Indians several thousand years ago were able to distill zinc. They were able to. That took zinc in the West was only a creation of like less than 1,000 years ago, whereas in India it was several thousand years ago. They were able to distill zinc and galvanize iron so it would not rust. That's how they built a lot of pillars, for example, which even to this day they still stand. Iron pillars. The only way is with galvanizing it to prevent oxidization, and that this is an evidence that we have already. Or huge ships that we had, which no other civilization at that time had. So all these are evidences, and it's not possible that we just jumped evolution. We were able to discover those. Either we saw these from somewhere else, there was a knowledge coming from somebody else. We are just trying to discover, at this stage, who these people were. We may associate them as gods. The ancients might have associated them as gods, but you cannot put your finger on it and say, I know what it is. We don't know what it is.
Right. And about the zinc thing that you said, I heard somebody saying this. I'm not able to recall. I think it was Sadhguru or somebody. Many people actually say this, that what do scientists do? They do research. And what is the meaning of research? Searching for something which our grandparents already knew. That's what we are searching. We are doing research on it.
Well said.
Yeah. And okay, so I haven't read your book, but I have ordered it. So I'm gonna definitely, I'm excited for it. But I was reading this, I was reading the summary and all, and also some comments on your site. What I came to know is that you mentioned something about the Nazis involving with the Vedas. So I haven't heard anybody saying that. Can you put some light on this? How are they related?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's something that very few people know. Very, very few people know. And it was also something which I found out when I was trying to research, that there was really difficult to get any kind of information on this. So I had to dig deeper. It took me a long time, but I found a lot of answers. So it was like Oppenheimer. There were several other people who knew the power that was there in the ancient knowledge coming from India. At that time, nobody was this advanced. So Hitler was one of them. Now, in no way am I supporting this dictator, because I have already been attacked on this subject by several people on social media, thinking that I'm supporting a dictator of the past. In no way I'm doing that. It's just that for a person to have become, he was at his prime, he was a leader at the end of the day, and it's not easy for anybody to do that. whether be it positive or negative. So this guy had a certain level of intellect, and he knew where to look for answers. And he found out the power of swastika, for example. He knew what it stood for. He sent many people to go back to Asia and try to research. And he was himself a learned man. He was, reading a lot of ancient scriptures coming from India. And so he knew the things which were, let's talk about weapons, weapons or warfare and all those things. He knew that somebody had this knowledge already in the past, and he knew exactly where to look for it. So he sent people, he collected a lot of information, and some of the museums in Europe have, or some of the communities here, even secret societies that I wrote about in my book, are believed to have that same knowledge that we once used to have. We may have lost it, but in the West, somehow it is better preserved than it is for us. So it is believed, of course, it's could be theoretical, but it is believed that his main involvement was to understand all the Vedic scriptures, for example, and use that for his own benefit. Fortunately, it was used for the wrong purpose, but nonetheless, there was certain knowledge that was adopted. And you could see, the Nazi symbol, for example, which is on my the first edition of my book, which later had to be removed because of the controversy, is also the evolution of the symbol itself. So evolution of human and evolution of the symbol itself, of how it was taken from a very positive, powerful symbol used by the Hindus, which later was literally taken, you can even say stolen, by Hitler to use it for his party. Now, in Hitler's defense, he believes that he was not stealing it, but he was only rightfully taking what was from his race, let's say. He believed that he was Aryan and his community was the Aryans, and he believed that the Aryans were the first ones to found the religion, Hindu religion, and that they were the first ones to give Hinduism certain symbols like the Om or the swastika and so on. So what he believes is he's only rightfully taking or borrowing even what was founded by his ancestors. Oh. So this is something that very few people know, and even the concept is very new for many people. So my research was basically on that, and that's why I because by word of mouth or trying to explain people, it's not exactly you won't reach a large audience. So I wanted, and it's also not the right medium. So I wanted to tell this like a story, like a tale, like an adventure of two scientists from Germany meeting a historian in India, and then going on this wild adventure and learning all these things, and coming across all the obstacles and meeting somebody
exactly. Like I would love to know more about your book. I mean, if you can summarize. But before that, before you explain about your book, I want to know what led you to writing, first of all. Can you start it, then you let me know about your book.
Absolutely. So for me, like I was saying, I just wanted to reach a large audience with the same story, and I realized if telling facts the way facts are is boring for people, for a lot of people, not for everybody, of course. But if you're just explaining the facts the way they are, it won't be. People may listen to it, people may forget it the next day. But if you tell it in a story, like an adventure, or at least consider, like I was saying, that things were literal, think outside the box. Maybe they were not figurative. And if you explain that in a storytelling, in the right storytelling kind of way, where you're explaining all the characters and you're explaining the environment and you're helping the person imagine this world, then it's a much nicer way to convey the same message. So that's why I decided to write a book, because this was something, the first research I've done, or first time I came across this concept was, I think around 7 years ago. So the first 2 years, I was talking to people, but I realized I was not explaining it the right way. And then I wanted to put it into a story with characters, like larger than life characters, some of them even. So people would be able to imagine it better.
Can you tell about your characters?
Yeah, so the main primary characters are two German scientists who work for a very famous institute. I mean, it's a suspense. You'll find it in the book. It's described in the first chapter itself. A scientific research facility in Berlin. And what they're doing is basically cross-species genetics. So they're trying to use or splice together two strains of DNA to create something which does not exist, for example. And that's one of the several experiments that they're doing. But the main goal is to achieve cross-species experiment, cross-species recreation of a new species which doesn't exist. So basically fusing two species together. So they come to a dead end. They try everything possible. They come to a dead end, and then suddenly one of them in their research group finds out about ancient Indian history stories, and also the mythology. We have gods, for example, who are half human and half animal, and then they say in the beginning they have an argument, and they say, okay, that can be possible, but then they later find evidences, like I was explaining, evidences, and they reach out to the east to look for answers, and then the adventure begins. But basically, it's because their research itself gets to a dead end, and then they try to go and look for answers, and it turns out to be a fun-filled or a thrill-filled adventure.
I'm sure your book is going to be amazing. I think you also wrote books on entrepreneurship and leadership. And again, this book is about science fiction. And do you think, in terms of entrepreneurship nowadays, do you think spirituality plays a role in entrepreneurship success?
Yeah, so absolutely, definitely. So
why?
So I was having this discussion even yesterday with a friend of mine. So in order to first be successful in your business life, you need to first be successful with yourself, right? You need to first be able to feed your own demons, and which I believe is the most important step. People try to suppress all their emotions, and that's only going to explode in your relationship with the family, or in your business, in your workspace. So I believe, for success to first be achieved outside oneself, it needs to first be achieved by the person inside first. So you need to first understand by yourself what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you need to be able to first understand what your own demons are, and then
reflection. Outer world is a reflection of the internal world.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's definitely it has definitely a lot to do with spirituality, and I completely believe that, especially because I've experienced that firsthand as well. For me, it was really challenging to write the book unless I was first able to calm myself and think clearly. So similarly, every time I enter a meeting, I need to first adjust myself and then calibrate myself even before I jump into the meeting. And people just don't realize it. Of course, I'm not saying everybody, but most people don't realize it, that it's the same thing. Spirituality in your inside and outside, just everything needs to be synchronized. It's a harmony.
Okay, and I think you have been to several countries, right?
Yes.
Multiple countries. How many?
I think the last I counted, it was around 32, 30, 32, 34, something like this. Yeah. So it was
that's more than the number of teeth we have. Okay. All right. Uh,
Very true. Very true.
which
Yeah.
was your
So,
memorable experience from all these travels?
I would say Greece and Iceland mainly, for two completely different reasons. Greece, because that's where I discovered similarities and between their ancient Greek mythology and Indian mythology, and their relationship, and also some Indo-Greek
Hmm.
ambassadors and Indo-Greek kings even, and then there was so much in the past. There was so much
This
collaboration
can be
between
our
these two
next
countries.
topic. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, we'll jump into that then. So basically, that's why Greece was for me very fascinating. I had a writer's block, which I previously believed was not true, but it
Hmm.
happens. So at a certain point in my book, I just couldn't go further. So I had to put it in. I had to shelf it for like almost a year until I randomly took this vacation to Greece, and then was going through the museums, doing my own research, understanding their own history, and then I found out that there are way more similarities than you can. I mean, not just similarities, but the same exact gods. It's actually everything is exactly the same. Very
Oh, nice.
minute tweaks which were done. So that
Oh.
is that. So for that reason, for the history reason, Greece was for me very memorable. Of course, India. I used as a kid. I used to travel a lot with my parents,
Hmm.
and we still travel a lot within India on pilgrimages. I come from a pretty spiritual and quite religious family who are very keen on pilgrimages. So I'm every time they go somewhere, I try to make it and I try to be part of it. The other country which I was very fascinated with was Iceland. But Iceland, for a completely different reason. Iceland's history is not very fascinating. uh, I mean, they do have their own pros and cons, but Iceland mainly for the nature, the sheer power of nature. I mean, the whole island is just built on volcano. Yet there's an entire civilization living on it.
Have you
Volcanoes that
been to
can erupt.
Greenland?
Sorry,
Greenland. Have you been to Greenland?
not yet, not yet, but that's on my bucket list. I'm going to go there
Yeah.
sometime soon, hopefully.
Because Iceland is uh, green and Greenland is icy, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, there are some theories surrounding that. So apparently, some of the first Celtics and Vikings moved. Right? They didn't want anybody to come there, so they wanted everybody to know it was a harsh place. So they
Mm.
just called it Iceland. So the other civilizations would just be scared to go there. And
Mm.
Greenland, there were so few people. There was hardly any people there back then, and they wanted to make it attractive, so they started calling it Greenland
Oh,
for other settlers. but I, but these are just stories. It's just um, there are several stories surrounding the names. Yeah.
nice, nice. Okay, so before we conclude, just tell the viewers where can they find you and your books.
Yeah. So my books are available on Barnes and Noble, if it's a US viewers, but also largely on Amazon. So primarily all my readers, they acquire the book on Amazon. Right now, for Indian audience, because of the COVID situation, most of the printing presses are in lockdown, so they're not printing the physical copies yet.
Mm.
But you can get the Kindle version, which is available now for for a promotional price on Amazon, which will continue for a couple of more months.
Okay, all right. So, anything at the last you want to say? Any piece of wisdom to the viewers?
uh, Piece of wisdom. So
Or else
this is
I can
just
ask you. See, we actually already discussed. We know that our ancient Vedas have got lost lot of wisdom, and we should be. There was a communication gap actually. Knowledge transfer problem was there. But I'm not going to ask you whether it is important to include Vedas in our school system or not. That is definitely important. But can
definitely
we do something now? Is
yes.
there a step-by-step process? What can we do?
Oh yes, yeah. So the most important thing for us is to learn from the past so we don't repeat the same mistakes. And despite that, because of lack of proper education around the world, I'm not being specific to a single country. A war that has already happened could have been avoided again because we know the after effects, right? It's as an example. So Kurukshetra has happened, but still we had another world war. We had another world war after that, although we know what the consequences are. So, so, so my personal message, even from my book, is to consider everything which the the history is trying to tell us in a literal way rather than a figurative way. If they say our gods, the avatars and everything, they were all blue in color, take that literally. I mean, consider it at least that it was probably literal. It could just be that the place they are coming from has a completely different kind of radiation, so their skin had to adapt in a different way, right? I mean, that'll allow you to think outside the box. So just consider the scripts and all the texts that are being explained now in a literal way rather than a figurative.
Okay. So, all right then, Dr. Charit, it was great talking to you. We had some interesting topics today. In my next discussion, I'm gonna talk about this grease thing, okay? Because I got that curiosity now. Right.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
all right. Anyways, thanks for connecting. So,
Thank
thank you
you so
very
much.
much.
That was a nice,
All right.
nice session, and hope to talk to you soon.
Sure.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.